She pulls out her phone and turns the screen toward him. Gray eyes stare back at him from a little girl's face. His eyes. "Meet Kennedy," she says. "Your 7-year-old daughter. The one you never knew existed. The woman who just took his company has one more secret that will destroy him." Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from and don't forget to click subscribe. A millionaire divorces his wife unaware she's pregnant. 7 years later, his worthless ex owns his company. Before we start the story, leave a comment telling us what city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. Sign the papers, Naomi. Julian Westbrook slid the divorce documents across the polished mahogany desk like he was closing a business deal, not ending a marriage. His voice was cold, efficient, the same tone he used when firing employees. The afternoon sun streaming through his corner office windows cast long shadows across the papers. Naomi Hayes sat across from him, her hands trembling as she stared at the papers, reading phrases that reduced 3 years of marriage to legal jargon. The gold band on her finger suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She remembered their wedding day, how he'd looked at her like she was the only person in the world, how his voice had shaken when he said his vows. 3 years. That's all forever had lasted. "Julian, please. Can we just talk about this? We used to be able to talk about everything. There's nothing to talk about." Julian didn't even look at her, focusing on his laptop where stock prices flickered. This marriage was a mistake from the beginning. You knew what you were getting into. A mistake? Naomi felt the word lodge in her chest like broken glass. We've been married for 3 years. 3 years of trying to be enough. And in those 3 years, what exactly have you contributed to my life? Now he looked at her, his gray eyes cold. You've been nothing but a distraction. I need a partner who understands business, not someone who spends her days volunteering at community centers and baking cookies for the neighbors. A mistake? Naomi's voice cracked. We've been married for 3 years. 3 years, Julian. And in those 3 years, what exactly have you contributed to my life? He leaned back in his leather chair, his gray eyes as cold as winter steel. You've been nothing but a distraction. I need a partner who understands business, not someone who spends her days volunteering at community centers and baking cookies for the neighbors. That's not fair. That's reality. Julian picked up his fountain pen, the one that cost more than most people's monthly rent. My company is expanding. I'm about to close the biggest deal of my career. I need to focus, and frankly, you're dead weight. Dead weight. The words hit Naomi like a physical blow. She looked at the man she'd fallen in love with 4 years ago, the man who'd promised her the world, who'd swept her off her feet with grand gestures and passionate declarations. Where had that man gone? When did you become so cold? When I realized sentiment doesn't build empires. Julian tapped the papers. Sign them. You'll get a fair settlement. $50,000. That should be more than enough to get you started. 50,000? After 3 years of marriage? Naomi felt, tears burning behind her eyes. But she refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. Be grateful I'm giving you anything. You came into this marriage with nothing. You'll leave with more than you deserve. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at it with more interest than he'd shown her in months. That's Vivienne. We have a meeting. The name stabbed through Naomi like a knife. Vivienne Chase, his new executive vice president. Tall, blonde, sophisticated, everything Julian apparently wanted. Everything Naomi wasn't. How long? She asked quietly. How long what? How long have you been sleeping with her? Julian had the audacity to look annoyed, not guilty. That's none of your concern. We're getting divorced. What I do with my personal life is my business. Naomi stood up, her legs unsteady. The room spun slightly and she gripped the edge of the desk. The nausea she'd been fighting all morning surged again. She'd been planning to tell him tonight, had bought a little gift box with a positive pregnancy test inside, had imagined his face lighting up with joy. What a fool she'd been. Are you finished being dramatic? Julian checked his Rolex. I have actual important matters to attend to. Naomi picked up the pen. Her hand shook as she signed her name on each line. watching her marriage dissolve with every stroke. There. Happy now? Immensely. Julian gathered the papers without even looking at her. My lawyer will be in touch about moving your things out. I'd appreciate it if you could be gone by the end of the week. The end of the week? Naomi? I'm not running a charity. The penthouse is mine. Everything in it is mine. You're welcome to take your personal belongings, but that's it. She thought about the home she'd tried to build in that cold, sterile penthouse, the plants she'd brought in to add life, the photographs she'd hung to make it feel warm, the cookbook collection she'd started, hoping to cook meals they'd share. None of it had mattered. None of it had been enough. Fine. Naomi walked toward the door, her vision blurring. I hope she makes you happy. I hope she's worth destroying what we had. We didn't have anything worth keeping. And Naomi? He didn't even look up from his phone. Don't come back here looking for handouts. I won't help you. Don't expect me to. She left his office, walked through the gleaming corridors of Westbrook Industries, past employees who wouldn't meet her eyes because everyone knew. Everyone always knew. The elevator ride down felt like falling. 37 floors to the ground, and with each floor, Naomi felt pieces of herself crumbling. Outside, the Chicago wind cut through her coat. December had arrived early and bitter. Naomi stood on the sidewalk, watching people rush past with their important lives and important destinations. She had nowhere to go. The penthouse wasn't hers. Her friends had slowly disappeared, absorbed into Julian's social circle, or abandoned because they weren't sophisticated enough. Her family was 2,000 miles away in Atlanta. She was alone. Completely alone. Except she wasn't. Naomi pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling the secret she carried. 6 weeks along, the doctor had said yesterday. Still early, but definitely pregnant. She'd been so happy, so sure this would fix everything between them. How naive. How incredibly, painfully naive. I won't come back, Julian, Naomi whispered to the winter wind. But someday you're going to regret this. Someday you're going to realize what you threw away. And I'm going to make sure you never forget it. 7 years later, Julian Westbrook sat in his office staring at financial reports that made his head pound. Red numbers everywhere, declining profits, rising debts, failed investments. His empire was crumbling, and he couldn't understand how it had happened so fast. Sir, his assistant Peter knocked hesitantly on the door. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes. Cancel it. I can't cancel the board meeting, sir. They're demanding answers about the quarterly losses. Then tell them I'm working on it. With all due respect, sir, you've been saying that for 6 months. The shareholders are getting nervous. Some are talking about selling their stakes. Julian's jaw tightened. Let them sell. I'll buy them out. With what capital? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Julian had overextended himself, betting big on ventures that hadn't paid off, making risky moves that used to be his signature success strategy, but had recently only led to disaster. Vivian had left him 2 years ago, taking a generous settlement and his pride with her. The penthouse felt empty. His life felt empty. Everything I touch turns to dust, Julian muttered. It's like I've been cursed. Peter shifted uncomfortably. There is something else you should know, sir. A new investor has been buying up shares in the company over the past 3 months. Quietly, methodically. They now control nearly 30%. 30%? Julian shot to his feet. Why wasn't I informed sooner? We didn't realize it was a coordinated effort until last week. The purchases were made through various shell companies and investment firms. Our analysts finally traced them all back to a single entity. Who? A company called Phoenix Rising Capital. Julian frowned. Never heard of them. Neither had we. They're relatively new, only been around for about 5 years, but they've made some incredibly savvy investments. Tech startups, real estate, green energy. Everything they touch seems to turn to gold. The irony wasn't lost on Julian. Who runs it? That's the interesting part. Peter pulled out his tablet. The CEO is a woman named Naomi Hayes. The name hit Julian like a freight train. His vision actually blurred for a second. That's impossible. I assure you, sir, it's very real. She'll be at the board meeting today. Apparently with her stake in the company, she has every right to attend. Julian's mind raced. Naomi Hayes, his ex-wife, the woman he'd dismissed as dead weight, as a distraction, as worthless. That was 7 years ago. She had nothing. $50,000 and a broken marriage. Evidently, she had much more than that. Peter showed him a photo on the tablet, a professional headshot from a recent Forbes article. Julian's breath caught. It was her. Older, more polished, radiating confidence he'd never seen in her before. Her natural hair was styled in elegant locks that framed her face. She wore a power suit that probably cost more than the dress budget he'd given her during their marriage. But it was her eyes that struck him most. They held a sharpness, a determination that made his blood run cold. "How?" he whispered. "How did she do this?" According to the article, she started with a small investment in a tech startup that exploded. Used those profits to fund other ventures. Built an impressive portfolio. She's considered one of the most successful self-made entrepreneurs of the decade. Self-made. On $50,000. Either she was the luckiest person alive, or she was far more capable than he'd ever given her credit for. Julian felt something unfamiliar crawling up his spine. Fear. What does she want? Peter hesitated. "I think she wants the company, sir. All of it." The board meeting was torture. Julian sat at the head of the table, trying to maintain his authority while 15 board members peppered him with questions he couldn't answer satisfactorily. Why are profits down 40% from last year? When will the Melbourne deal finally close? What's the concrete plan for the Shanghai expansion? He deflected. Promised, assured, using corporate speak and vague projections. But he could see doubt growing in their eyes with every evasive answer. They'd heard these promises before. They'd watched him fail to deliver. He was losing them, and he knew it. Then the door opened. Naomi Hayes walked in like she owned the place, which Julian realized with growing horror she almost did. She wore a navy power suit tailored to perfection, her jewelry understated but clearly expensive. Her natural locks were styled elegantly, framing her face in a way that exuded confidence and power. She moved with the grace of someone who belonged in rooms like this, who'd earned her place, through intelligence and grit. Naomi. Julian found his voice, though it came out weaker than he'd intended. What a surprise. Is it? Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and there was something predatory in the way she looked at him. I did send notice through my lawyers 3 weeks ago about my intention to attend. Perhaps it got lost in your busy schedule. Or perhaps you chose to ignore it, hoping I'd just go away. The barb landed perfectly. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. She took a seat directly across from him, positioning herself as his equal, maybe even his superior. Folding her hands on the table, she said pleasantly, "Please, continue. I'm eager to hear the plan for turning this company around. I've been reading the quarterly reports with great interest." Then the door opened. Naomi Hayes walked in like she owned the place. Which, Julian realized with growing horror, she almost did. "Apologies for my tardiness." Her voice was smooth, professional, commanding. Nothing like the soft, hesitant tone he remembered. She wore a navy suit that fit perfectly, her jewelry understated but expensive. She moved with the grace of someone who belonged in rooms like this, who'd earned her place. Naomi. Julian found his voice. What a surprise. Is it? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I did send notice through my lawyers 3 weeks ago about my intention to attend. Perhaps it got lost in your busy schedule. The barb landed. She took a seat directly across from him, folding her hands on the table. Please continue. I'm eager to hear the plan for turning this company around. There was a long, uncomfortable silence. Finally, board member Catherine Wolfe spoke up. Perhaps Miss Hayes has some insights. After all, Phoenix Rising Capital has been remarkably successful. All eyes turned to Naomi. She looked at Julian for a long moment, and he saw something in her expression that made his stomach drop. This wasn't coincidence. This was calculated. I do have some thoughts. Naomi opened her portfolio. But first, I think it's important the board knows about my history with Mr. Westbrook. Some of you may not be aware, But Julian and I were married. 7 years ago, he divorced me, gave me $50,000, and told me never to come back looking for handouts. Gasps around the table. Julian's face burned. Naomi, that's personal business and has no place. It has every place here, she interrupted smoothly, because your judgment then reflects your judgment now. You saw me as worthless, as dead weight, as a distraction. You were wrong. Just as you've been wrong about the Melbourne deal, wrong about the Shanghai expansion, wrong about nearly every major decision you've made in the past 3 years. The board members were leaning forward now, listening. Julian felt control slipping through his fingers like sand. You're letting personal grudges cloud your business sense, Julian said, trying to regain ground. Am I? Naomi's smile was razor sharp. Let's talk numbers then. She proceeded to dismantle every decision he'd made in the past 3 years with surgical precision, showing exactly where he'd miscalculated, where he'd been too aggressive, where he'd ignored warning signs. She had data, projections, insider knowledge he couldn't figure out how she'd obtained. The board members were nodding, asking her questions, looking to her instead of him. It was a coup happening in slow motion. When she finished, Catherine Wolfe spoke. Ms. Hayes, what exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing a vote of no confidence in Julian Westbrook as CEO. Naomi's voice was calm, like she was ordering coffee. I'm proposing the board consider new leadership. Someone with a proven track record of success. Someone who actually cares about this company's future. The room erupted in overlapping voices. Julian stood abruptly, his chair scraping harshly. This is absurd. I built this company from the ground up. You can't just walk in here after 7 years and take it from me. I'm not taking anything, Julian. Naomi stood as well, meeting his eyes across the table. I'm simply pointing out that you're driving this company into the ground, and I have the resources and the stake to do something about it. You also have a personal vendetta. Maybe. Her eyes glittered. But that doesn't make me wrong, does it? The meeting devolved into chaos. Formal motions were made. Arguments erupted, allegiances formed and broke. Through it all, Naomi remained calm, poised, answering questions with facts and figures that Julian couldn't refute. By the time they adjourned for lunch, Julian knew he'd lost. The board would vote against him. It was only a matter of time. He found Naomi in the hallway outside, checking her phone. We need to talk. Do we? She didn't look up. I think everything that needs to be said was said in there. How did you do it? Julian couldn't keep the desperation from his voice. How did you go from nothing to this in 7 years? I learned from the best. Naomi finally looked at him, and her expression was unreadable. You taught me that sentiment doesn't build empires, remember? That dead weight should be cut loose. I took your advice to heart. This is revenge. This is business. Don't confuse the two. She started to walk away. Naomi, wait. She paused but didn't turn around. I was wrong. About what? About everything. About you. About us. I was cruel and I was stupid and I'm sorry. Now she turned, and her smile was sad. 7 years too late, Julian. But thank you for the apology. I'm sure it cost you a lot to say it. It did. Then let me give you something in return. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. A piece of advice, the way you once gave me advice. When you lose everything, when you're standing in the ruins of what you built, remember that you did this to yourself. Remember that the woman you called worthless is the one who brought you down. Remember that arrogance has a price, and you're about to pay it. You really hate me that much? Hate you? Naomi laughed softly. Julian, I don't hate you. I pity you. You had everything that mattered, and you threw it away for what? A company that's failing? A woman who left you the moment things got hard? A life so empty you can't even see the void? I don't need to hate you. You've already destroyed yourself. Where's the woman I married? The soft, kind woman who baked cookies for neighbors. She grew up. Naomi's eyes hardened. She had to, when the man she loved told her she was nothing. And speaking of growing up, there's something you should know before this goes any further. Something that changes everything between us. What? Julian felt ice in his veins. You asked how I did it, how I built Phoenix Rising from $50,000. Want to know the truth? Julian nodded, his mouth dry, unable to look away. I had motivation. I had a reason to succeed. That was more important than revenge or money. I had someone depending on me who needed me to be strong when I wanted to fall apart. She pulled out her phone, scrolled for a moment, then turned the screen toward him. Julian's heart stopped. The air left his lungs. His vision tunneled until all he could see was the photo. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with caramel skin darker than his but lighter than Naomi's. Her hair was pulled into 2 perfect puffs with purple ribbons. She wore a school uniform and was grinning at the camera, holding up a certificate that read, Student of the Month. But it was her eyes that destroyed him. Gray eyes. His eyes. The same unusual gray-green shade he'd inherited from his grandmother. Those eyes in this little girl's face, sparkling with intelligence and joy, completely unaware that her father was a man who'd thrown her mother away. Meet Kennedy, Naomi said quietly. Kennedy Elizabeth Hayes. Your daughter. The one you never knew existed because you divorced me 3 days before I was going to tell you I was pregnant. 3 days, Julian. I had the test in my purse that day. I had a gift box prepared with the positive test and tiny baby shoes. I was going to tell you over dinner. But you served me divorce papers instead. The hallway tilted. Julian grabbed the wall for support, staring at the photo like it might disappear. I have a daughter? You have a daughter. A brilliant, beautiful, perfect daughter who's never met you and never will if I have anything to say about it. She deserves better than a father who measures worth in dollar signs. The air felt too thin. Julian couldn't breathe properly. Why didn't you tell me? Why would I? Naomi's voice was bitter now. So you could tell me the baby was dead weight too. So you could pressure me to get rid of her? So you could throw more money at me and tell me to disappear? No, thank you. I raised her alone. Built a life for us alone. And she's better off never knowing you existed. That's not fair. Fair? Naomi's laugh was harsh. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about how I was homeless for 2 months after you kicked me out. How I slept in my car, because I was too proud to go back to my family in Atlanta and admit what a mistake I'd made. How I worked 3 jobs while pregnant because $50,000 doesn't last long in Chicago. How I gave birth alone in a hospital with no one to hold my hand because you'd made me cut ties with everyone I knew. Don't you dare talk to me about fair. I didn't know. No, you didn't care. There's a difference. She tucked her phone away. Kennedy is the reason I succeeded, Julian. Every investment, every risk, every late night and early morning, I did it for her. To give her the life she deserves. To prove to her that her mother is strong and capable and worth something. And do you know what the beautiful thing is? The truly poetic justice of it all? What? Julian's voice was barely a whisper. She made me better than you. Loving her, raising her, fighting for her. It made me into the person I was supposed to be all along. The person you could never see. So thank you. Thank you for divorcing me. Thank you for calling me worthless. Thank you for breaking my heart so completely that I had no choice but to rebuild myself into someone stronger. Without you, I never would have become me. She started walking away again. The board meeting resumes in 30 minutes, she called over her shoulder. I suggest you prepare your resignation speech. It'll be easier if you step down voluntarily. Julian stood in the hallway long after she disappeared, staring at nothing. He had a daughter, a little girl with his eyes and Naomi's smile, a child he'd never held, never met, never known existed. And he was about to lose everything. His company, his reputation, his legacy, all of it crumbling because he'd been too blind, too arrogant, too stupid to see what he had when he had it. 7 years ago, he'd told Naomi she was worthless. Today, she'd proven she was worth more than he could ever hope to be. And the worst part? She was right. He'd done this to himself. The afternoon session was brutal. The vote of no confidence passed with only 2 dissenting votes. Julian Westbrook was officially removed as CEO of his own company. Naomi was installed as interim CEO pending a full transition plan. He watched it happen in a daze, unable to fight, unable to even form coherent arguments. His world was ending in a conference room with fluorescent lighting and stale coffee. When it was over, Catherine Wolfe approached him. "For what it's worth, Julian, I'm sorry. It had to be done. The company needs strong leadership. From my ex-wife. From someone who knows how to adapt and survive. She's impressive, I'll give you that. Maybe you should have held on to her when you had the chance. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had advice." Julian ignored them all, gathering his things mechanically. Peter helped him pack up his office. 7 years of work, of building, of striving, reduced to 3 cardboard boxes and a potted plant he'd never watered. Naomi found him as he was leaving. "I know you probably hate me right now," she said. "But for what it's worth, I'm going to save this company. I'm going to turn it around. Not for you. For the 1,000 people who work here and depend on their paychecks to feed their families. Good." Julian was too tired to be bitter, They deserve better than I gave them. They do. She hesitated. "Julian, about Kennedy." "Don't." He held up a hand. "You made your position clear. She's better off without me. I can't argue with that. Not after today. I know I have no right to ask, but could I at least see a picture? Of her?" Naomi studied him for a long moment, then pulled out her phone again. She scrolled through photos. Kennedy at her school play, dressed as a tree. Kennedy at the science fair with a volcano project. Kennedy on her 7th birthday, blowing out candles shaped like the number 7. "She loves science," Naomi said softly. "Wants to be an astronaut. She's smart, scary smart. Reads at a 10th grade level already. And she's kind. So incredibly kind. She volunteers at animal shelters, helps younger kids with their homework, donates half her allowance to charity. She's everything I wish I'd been." "She's everything I never was," Julian said. "You don't know that. You never tried." "No, I didn't." He handed back the phone. "Take care of her. Keep her away from me." "You're right. She deserves better." "I'm glad you can see that." Naomi tucked the phone away. "For what it's worth, I hope you figure out what you're looking for. I hope you find whatever it is that makes you happy. Because money and power clearly don't. I don't know if I'm capable of being happy. Then learn." She turned to leave, then paused. "Julian, there's one more thing you should know." "What's that?" "The board voted for my transition plan. As of today, I control 51% of Westbrook Industries through various acquisitions finalized this morning, which means the company isn't just being run by me. It belongs to me now." Julian felt the final nail drive into the coffin. "You own it?" "I own it. Completely. Irrevocably. Mine." She smiled, and this time it was genuine, almost gentle. "Funny how things work out, isn't it? The dead weight ended up carrying everything." Julian watched her walk away, her heels clicking confidently on the marble floor. His company, his legacy, his entire life's work, gone. Transferred to the woman he'd thrown away like garbage. The woman who'd built an empire while he'd destroyed his. The woman who'd created the most precious thing in the world, a child, his child, and raised her to be everything good and kind and smart. All without him. The security guard, a man Julian had walked past 1,000 times without ever learning his name, cleared his throat. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to return your building access card." "Right." Julian fumbled for the card, hands shaking. "Of course. Are you all right, sir? You look pale." "Fine. I'm fine." The guard took the card, and with it went the last physical tie to the building Julian had spent years making his second home. "Elevators are this way," the guard said kindly. "Let me help you with those boxes." They rode down in silence. 37 floors. Just like 7 years ago when Naomi had left this building heartbroken and pregnant. Julian wondered if she'd felt this hollow, this completely unmade. Outside, winter had returned. Snow was starting to fall, soft and quiet. covering Chicago in white. Julian stood on the sidewalk, boxes at his feet, watching people rush past with their important lives and destinations. He had nowhere to go. The penthouse was being foreclosed. His friends, if he'd ever had any real ones, had scattered. His life was a series of burnt bridges and bad decisions. He was alone. Completely alone. No, that wasn't true. Somewhere in this city, in a life he'd never be part of, there was a little girl named Kennedy, his daughter. A piece of him walking around in the world, breathing and learning and growing. And she didn't even know he existed. Julian's phone rang. Peter. Sir, the press has gotten wind of the change in leadership. They're asking for a statement. Tell them no comment. Sir, they're going to write the story with or without your input. They're saying you were ousted by your ex-wife in a revenge takeover. Let them say what they want. It's not far from the truth, is it? Silence on the other end. Will you need anything else, sir? No, Peter. You've been a good assistant. Thank you for putting up with me all these years. Sir, Julian could hear the sympathy in his voice. For what it's worth, she's a good CEO. In the few hours she's been in charge, she's already started making positive changes. Staff is actually excited. Maybe this will all work out for the best. Maybe. Julian hung up. He picked up his boxes and walked toward his car, a luxury sedan he probably couldn't afford much longer. The snow fell harder, coating his shoulders, melting in his hair. 7 years. That's how long it had taken for karma to catch up with him, for his arrogance to come full circle, for the woman he'd called worthless to prove that she was worth everything, and he was the one with nothing. I'm sorry, Naomi, Julian whispered to the falling snow, his breath forming white clouds. I'm sorry, Kennedy. I'm sorry for being the kind of man who destroys beautiful things and doesn't realize it until they're gone. The city didn't answer. It just kept moving, breathing, living. With or without Julian Westbrook, Chicago would continue. The world would spin. Because the truth was, the world didn't need him. He'd built an empire thinking he was indispensable, but today had proven what Naomi had known all along. He was replaceable. But somewhere in that same city, in a corner office that used to be his, Naomi Hayes was reviewing transition plans and reassuring employees their jobs were safe. She was building something better than anything Julian had ever created, building it with compassion and intelligence, and the kind of strength that comes from surviving the unsurvivable. And somewhere, probably in a warm apartment filled with books and laughter, a little girl named Kennedy was working on her homework and dreaming of stars. She was growing up loved and supported, never knowing her father was standing in the snow, realizing he'd thrown away everything that mattered. The worthless ex-wife had won. The dead weight had carried everything, and Julian Westbrook had finally lost not just his company, but his chance at redemption, his daughter, and any hope of becoming the man he should have been. But as he loaded the boxes into his car, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Just 4 words that made his blood run cold and his heart race. 4 words that changed everything. We need to talk. Naomi. Julian stared at the text until his vision blurred. We need to talk. From Naomi. His fingers trembled as he typed back. When? Where? The reply came immediately. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Lincoln Park, near the pond. Come alone. Julian spent that night in a budget hotel that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. He lay on the scratchy comforter staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past 7 years. Every decision that had led him here. But mostly, he thought about Kennedy, his daughter. 7 years old with his eyes and Naomi's smile. The magnitude of what he'd lost hit him in waves. At 9:45 the next morning, Julian stood by the pond in Lincoln Park. Snow had stopped, leaving Chicago covered in white. Families walked by. Dogs chased each other. Life continued while Julian's world remained in ruins. She appeared at exactly 10. Naomi walked toward him wearing a long camel coat, composed, in control. Transformed into someone formidable. Thank you for coming. What do you want, Naomi? To talk about Kennedy. I spent all night thinking. You're absolutely correct that you have no right to ask about her. Julian blinked. That's not what I expected you to say. But here's the thing. This isn't about what you deserve or what I want. This is about Kennedy. You're her father. She has your eyes, your stubbornness. And lately, she's been asking questions about her dad. Julian's throat tightened. What did you tell her? The truth. That her father and I weren't right for each other. That we separated before I knew she was coming. But I never told her you were a bad person. Despite everything you did to me, you're still her father. And children deserve to know their parents if it's safe. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm going to give you a choice. You can walk away right now. Sign away your parental rights. No judgment. Or you can fight for the right to know her. But not with lawyers. I mean actually becoming the kind of man who deserves to be her father. What do you want from me? Proof. Prove to me you've changed. Prove you understand why you failed as a husband and why you can't fail as a father. How? That's exactly why you're not ready to meet her yet. But I'm willing to help you if you're willing to try. Why would you help me? She was quiet. Because Kennedy drew a picture last week. It was supposed to be her family. She drew herself, me, her grandmother, our cat. But in the corner she drew a shadow figure. When her teacher asked who it was, Kennedy said it was the daddy-shaped hole in her life. Julian felt like he'd been punched. Kids are perceptive. They know when something's missing even if they can't articulate it. And I realized that no matter how angry I am at you, no matter how much you hurt me, Kennedy deserves a chance to know her father. But only if that father is someone worth knowing. Tell me what to do. Naomi stopped walking and faced him. First, therapy. Real therapy with someone who specializes in narcissistic personality traits and emotional intelligence. You need to understand why you became the person who could throw away a pregnant wife. Second, financial responsibility. I don't need your money, but Kennedy has a college fund that you should contribute to, not because she needs it, but because caring for your child financially is basic decency. Third, consistency. You will meet me every Saturday at this exact spot for the next 6 months. Rain, snow, sunshine, doesn't matter. You show up, we talk, you prove you're serious. 6 months? Julian felt panic rising. That's a long time. Kennedy has waited 7 years. You can wait 6 months. After that, if I believe you're ready, I'll introduce you to her. But Julian, if you miss even one Saturday, if you show any sign that you're not fully committed, the offer disappears forever. I'll do it. All of it. Whatever it takes. We'll see. Naomi pulled out a business card. This is Dr. Patricia Chen. She's expecting your call. First session is this week. And Julian? If you think you can charm your way through this like you charmed your way through business deals, you're wrong. Dr. Chen doesn't play games, and neither do I. The first Saturday session was awkward. They sat on a cold bench while Naomi asked him questions. Why did you really divorce me? What were you afraid of? Julian fumbled through answers. Defensive at first, then gradually more honest. The therapy sessions with Dr. Chen were brutal. She made him examine every ugly corner of his psyche, every moment of cruelty. She made him confront that he'd learned from his father that love was weakness. Breaking down those walls was the hardest thing Julian had ever done. By the third Saturday, Julian talked about his childhood. Naomi listened without judgment, and for the first time, Julian felt like someone saw him. By the sixth Saturday, they walked instead of sitting. Conversations became exchanges. Naomi told him about early years with Kennedy. The first smile, the first word, the first steps. I was terrified every single day, Naomi admitted. Terrified I'd mess her up. You were enough. Julian meant it. You're an incredible mother. By the 10th Saturday, Julian brought coffee. He remembered she liked it with 2 sugars and cream. By the 15th, they laughed together. By the 20th Saturday in late April, Naomi said something that changed everything. I think you're ready. Ready? To meet her. Not as her father, not yet. But as my friend. We'll start small, are you sure? Number, are you? Naomi smiled slightly. But Dr. Chen thinks you've done the work. Your therapist and I have been communicating with your permission. She says you've made genuine progress. And I can see it too, Julian. You're different, softer, more present, more human. What if I mess it up? What if I say the wrong thing or she doesn't like me or... You will mess up. That's guaranteed. Parenting is just one mistake after another, hoping you get more right than wrong. But Kennedy is resilient and kind and curious. Give her a chance. Give yourself a chance. The following Saturday, Naomi texted him an address, a children's science museum. I'll be there with Kennedy at 2 p.m. Just happened to run into us. Follow my lead. Julian arrived at 1:30, too nervous to be fashionable late. He walked through the museum 3 times, practicing what he'd say, how he'd act. His palms were sweating. His heart raced like he was about to give the most important presentation of his life. Which, in a way, he was. He saw them near the dinosaur exhibit. Kennedy stood in front of a T-Rex skeleton, her face tilted up in wonder. She wore jeans, light-up sneakers, and a hoodie that said, "Future Astronaut." Her hair was in 2 braided pigtails. She was talking animatedly to Naomi, pointing at different bones, clearly explaining something with the seriousness of a tiny professor. She was the most beautiful thing Julian had ever seen. Naomi noticed him first. Her eyes met his across the exhibit. She gave a small nod. Julian walked over, trying to look casual, trying not to look like his entire world was in those few steps. "Naomi?" He said it like he was surprised. "Small world." "Julian." Naomi's smile was warm, practiced. "What are you doing here?" I had a meeting nearby. Thought I'd check out the museum. It's been years." Kennedy looked up at him with those gray eyes, his eyes, full of curiosity but no recognition. "Who's this, Mama?" "This is Julian. He's an old friend of mine from a long time ago." "Hi, Julian." Kennedy extended her hand like a little adult. "I'm Kennedy. I'm 7 3/4. Nice to meet you, Kennedy." Julian shook her small hand gently, terrified he'd somehow break her. "I like your hoodie. You want to be an astronaut?" "I want to be the first person to walk on Mars." She said it with such confidence, such certainty. "Do you like space?" "I don't know much about it, honestly, but I'd love to learn." Kennedy's face lit up. "Really? Most grown-ups say space is boring. Space is never boring. Here, let me show you the planetarium section. It's the best part." She grabbed his hand, small and warm and trusting, and pulled him toward another exhibit. Naomi followed at a distance, watchful but allowing it. Kennedy talked nonstop, about constellations and black holes and the Mars rover and how she was saving her allowance to go to space camp next summer. Julian listened to every word like she was revealing the secrets of the universe, which in a way, she was. "Do you have kids?" Kennedy asked suddenly as they stood under a projection of the Milky Way. Julian's breath caught. Naomi was right there, and he looked at her. She gave the slightest nod. "No," he said carefully, "but I think if I did, I'd want them to be as smart and interesting as you." Kennedy beamed. "Thanks. Mama says I'm smart, but I need to work on listening. My teacher says I talk too much in class. But how can I not talk when we're learning about photosynthesis? That's literally the coolest thing ever. Plants make their own food, Julian. Their own food." "That is pretty cool," Julian agreed, smiling. After 2 hours, Kennedy was clearly getting tired. "Mama, can we get ice cream before we go home?" Naomi checked her watch. "It's almost dinner time, sweetie. But tomorrow is Sunday. We could get ice cream after the park." Kennedy pouted, but accepted this. She turned to Julian. "Are you going to keep being friends with my mama?" I hope so. If she'll let me." "You should. Mama doesn't have a lot of friends because she works so much. She could use more friends." Kennedy said it with the blunt honesty only children possess. Julian met Naomi's eyes over Kennedy's head. "I'd really like that too." As they walked toward the exit, Kennedy slipped her hand into Julian's again. "This was fun. Can you come to the museum with us again sometime? If your mom says it's okay, I'd love to. Promise?" "Promise." That night, Naomi called him. "You did well today. She's amazing." Julian's voice was thick with emotion. I can't believe I almost missed knowing her. But you didn't. You're here now. That's what matters. Naomi paused. She liked you. Asked about you at dinner. Wanted to know how we knew each other, and if you liked dinosaurs. What did you tell her? The truth. That we were friends a long time ago. Lost touch, and recently reconnected. She doesn't need the whole story yet. Maybe not ever, depending on how things go. I don't want to disrupt her life, Naomi. I just want to be part of it in whatever way makes sense for her. That's the right answer. Naomi's voice softened. Keep showing up, Julian. Keep being this version of yourself. The rest will follow. The following months were a delicate dance. Julian met them for museum trips, park visits, and eventually, casual dinners. Kennedy warmed to him gradually, sharing her school projects and science experiments. She didn't know he was her father, but she knew he was someone who cared, someone who listened, someone who showed up. Julian contributed quietly to her college fund and her school. He sent Naomi money for Kennedy's expenses without being asked, not to buy access, but because it was right. He celebrated his 8th month of therapy by telling Dr. Chen he finally understood what he'd lost. Not just a company or a wife, but the chance to be part of something real, something that mattered more than profit margins and market shares. One evening in July, 6 months after that first museum meeting, Naomi invited Julian to Kennedy's 8th birthday party. Just a small thing. Her grandmother will be there, a few friends from school. You should come. As Julian or as? Just as Julian. For now. The party was in Naomi's backyard, a cozy space behind a brownstone in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing like the penthouse, but full of life and warmth. Kennedy's grandmother, Naomi's mother, Mrs. Hayes, gave Julian a long, assessing look when they were introduced. So you're Julian. Naomi's told me about you. All good things, I hope. Some good. Some honest. Mrs. Hayes's smile was knowing. My daughter doesn't do anything halfway. If she's letting you into Kennedy's life, you must have proven yourself. But grandmothers are more skeptical than mothers. Break that little girl's heart, and you'll answer to me. Understood. I have no intention of hurting her. We'll see. Time tells all truths. Kennedy spent the party being the center of attention, blowing out candles shaped like the number 8, opening presents, playing with friends. Julian watched from the periphery, content to observe. But then Kennedy ran over, grabbed his hand and pulled him toward a group. This is my friend Julian. He likes space now. I'm teaching him. The casual possessiveness of that statement, my friend Julian, hit him harder than any business loss ever had. Later, as the sun set and guests filtered away, Kennedy fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from excitement. Naomi covered her with a blanket while Julian helped clean up paper plates and decorations. Thank you for inviting me, Julian said quietly. It meant more than you know. You're good with her. Naomi watched Kennedy sleep, patient, present. Nothing like the man I married. I'm trying to be better. For her. And for yourself. Julian considered this. Yeah, for myself too. Turns out I don't like who I was either. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Naomi said, Kennedy asked me yesterday if you were her dad. Julian's heart stopped. What did you say? I asked her why she thought that. She said, because you have the same eyes and because you look at her the way dads look at their kids on TV. She's perceptive. So I told her the truth. That yes, you're her father, but the situation is complicated because you and I weren't together when she was born. How did she take it? Naomi smiled. She asked if that meant she could call you dad, or if Julian was better. She said she'd need to think about it and would let us know her decision. She's negotiating terms? Julian laughed in disbelief. That's the most perfect thing I've ever heard. She's my daughter. Of course she negotiates. They both looked at Kennedy sleeping peacefully. And what do you think? Julian asked. About her calling you dad? I think that's between you and her. But Julian, if you're going to be her father, really be her father, then I need to know you're committed. No backing out when it gets hard. No disappearing when work gets busy. Children need consistency. I'm in. Completely. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Then we'll figure it out. One day at a time. The following Saturday, Kennedy announced her decision. We were at the park, just the three of them, having a picnic. I've decided, Kennedy said, with the gravity of a judge delivering a verdict, that Julian can be my dad. But I'm not calling you daddy because that's for little kids. I'll call you dad when we're around other people, and Julian when it's just us. Unless you do something really dad-like, then maybe I'll call you dad more. What counts as dad-like? Julian asked, fighting tears. I don't know yet. I'll tell you when it happens. Deal. Kennedy extended her hand for a shake. Julian shook it solemnly, then pulled her into a hug. She hugged back, fierce and tight. Okay, this is dad-like. Kennedy's voice was muffled against his shoulder. You can be dad now. That night, after they'd dropped Kennedy at her grandmother's for a sleepover, Julian and Naomi sat on her front steps. It was a warm summer evening, fireflies blinking in the growing darkness. I never thought we'd be here, Julian said. Co-parenting, actually getting along, being something like friends. Life is strange that way. Naomi pulled her knees up. 7 years ago, if someone had told me that the man who broke me would become someone I could trust with our daughter, I'd have called them crazy. I'm sorry. I know I've said it before, but I need to keep saying it. I'm sorry for what I did, for who I was, for the years you struggled alone, for everything. I know, and I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger was exhausting. Kennedy needed me to be strong, not bitter. So I let it go. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward. Forward sounds good. They sat in comfortable silence. Then Julian said, Can I ask you something? Shoot. Why did you really buy my company? Was it revenge? Naomi smiled. Honestly? At first, yes. I wanted you to feel what I felt. Powerless, disposable, worthless. I wanted to be the one in control for once. But then I actually looked at the company. Really looked at it. And I saw all these people. Hundreds of employees with families and dreams and bills to pay. They didn't deserve to go down with your sinking ship. So I saved it. Not for you. For them. And maybe to prove to myself that I could. That I wasn't the worthless woman you'd thrown away. You were never worthless. I was just too blind and stupid to see your value. Now I see it. I see it every day in how you've raised Kennedy, how you run your business, how you've given me a chance I don't deserve. You're seeing it because you're finally looking. That's growth. They talked until the fireflies disappeared and the stars came out. Talked about Kennedy's school plans, and her science camp and Julian's therapy breakthroughs. Talked about Naomi's business expansions and the changes she was making at Westbrook Industries, which she'd renamed Phoenix Westbrook Corporation. A blend of old and new, she explained, acknowledging the past but focused on rising from its ashes. I like that. Julian smiled. Very poetic. I have my moments. As Julian stood to leave, he hesitated. Naomi? Yeah? Thank you. For the second chance. For letting me know my daughter. For showing me how to be better. Thank you for being the kind of person who can show up when I left you with nothing. Don't make me regret it. I won't. I promise. Months passed. Julian became a fixture in Kennedy's life. He attended her school science fair, where she won second place for her volcano project, and cried because she wanted first. He taught her to ride a bike without training wheels, running alongside her in the park until she found her balance. He read her bedtime stories when it was his turn for evening duty, doing silly voices that made her giggle. He wasn't perfect. He forgot about early dismissal once and panicked when the school called. He bought her a toy that was too advanced and had to return it. He struggled with her math homework because third-grade math had apparently become much harder since he was 8. But he showed up, consistently, reliably. And slowly, Kennedy stopped testing him. She started calling him Dad without hesitation. She added him to her family drawings. She asked his opinion on important matters like whether space was cooler than dinosaurs and if cats were better than dogs. By Kennedy's 9th birthday, Julian had been part of her life for more than a year. The party was bigger this time, held at a rented space with a planetarium theme. Kennedy wore a custom shirt that said, "Space Princess," and held court like the queen she was. "This is my dad," she introduced Julian to her friends with pride. "He used to not know anything about space, but I taught him everything." "You did an excellent job," Julian agreed, ruffling her hair. "Now I know that Mars has 2 moons and Jupiter has a great red spot and that Pluto is still a planet in our hearts even if scientists say it's not," Kennedy finished. "Exactly." After the party, after Kennedy crashed from sugar overload and was sleeping peacefully in her room, Julian and Naomi found themselves alone in her living room. "Thank you for another wonderful party." Julian sank into the couch. "She's going to remember this forever." "She will." Naomi sat beside him, closer than she would have a year ago. "You know, watching you with her today, I realized something." "What's that?" "You've become the father I always hoped you'd be. Not the man I married, but someone better. Someone real." Julian felt his throat tighten. "That means everything coming from you." "I mean it. Kennedy is lucky to have you in her life. And I'm—" She paused, searching for words. "I'm glad you fought for this. Glad you didn't give up." "I couldn't. She's the best thing I never knew I had." Naomi smiled. "You know what else I realized? I'm not angry anymore. At all. When I look at you now, I don't see the man who hurt me. I see Kennedy's dad. I see someone who's done the work to change. I see someone who shows up. That's all I ever wanted." Julian met her eyes. To be seen as someone who shows up? To be seen as someone who's trying, who's growing, who cares about something beyond himself. You are all those things. Naomi held his gaze. "And it's nice. Having a partner in parenting, someone who understands Kennedy like I do, someone who loves her like I do. We make a good team. We do." There was a pause, charged with something neither of them wanted to name. Then Naomi stood. "I should probably check on her. Make sure she actually took off her shoes before passing out." Julian stood too. "I should go. Let you both rest." "Julian?" He turned at the door. "Yeah? Same time next week? Movie night? Kennedy wants to watch that new space documentary. Wouldn't miss it." As Julian drove home to his modest apartment, so different from the penthouse but infinitely more meaningful, he thought about how much had changed. He'd lost an empire but gained a daughter. Lost a fortune but found purpose. Lost everything he thought mattered and discovered what actually did. 2 years after that first Saturday meeting in the park, Julian's phone rang while he was helping Kennedy with a school project about the solar system. His apartment was covered in papier-mâché planets and glitter. It was Naomi. "Julian, can you come over? We need to talk." His heart sank. Those words still carried weight. "Is everything okay? With Kennedy?" "She's fine. She's at my mom's. This is about us." I'll be right there." 20 minutes later, Julian stood in Naomi's living room, nervous. The last time she'd said they needed to talk, it had been the beginning of his redemption. What could it mean now? "Sit down," Naomi said. "You're making me nervous." "Wasn't that the point?" He sat. "Okay. What's going on?" Naomi took a deep breath. "Do you remember what you said to me 7 years ago when you divorced me?" Julian winced. "That you were worthless, that you were dead weight." "Yes." "Do you still believe that?" "God, no. Naomi, you're the most capable, strongest, most incredible person I've ever known. You're an amazing mother, a brilliant businesswoman, and someone who had every right to destroy me, but chose mercy instead." "Good. Because I need you to remember that." She pulled out a folder. "This is a proposal." "For what?" "For us. Julian, we've been co-parenting successfully for 2 years. Kennedy is thriving. You've proven yourself over and over. And I've realized something. I trust you. Maybe not with my heart, not yet, but with our daughter. With the things that matter. That's huge." "Naomi, it is. And I've also realized that Kennedy isn't the only one who's been happier since you came back into our lives. I have too." Julian's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe it's time to make this official." Not marriage, she added quickly, seeing his face. Not yet. Maybe not ever in the traditional sense. But a real partnership. Legal co-parenting, joint decisions, shared custody that's official and protected. I have papers drawn up if you want to review them. I don't need to review them. Julian's voice was thick. Whatever you think is fair, I'll sign. Don't be stupid. Read them first. She thrust the folder at him. I'm offering you 50-50 custody, Julian. Equal parenting time. Equal decision-making. Equal everything. This isn't about what's fair to you. This is about what's best for Kennedy. And she deserves both her parents fully in her life. Julian read through the documents, tears blurring the words. It was everything he'd never dared hope for. Legally recognized rights to his daughter. A real place in her life. Proof that he'd earned back what he'd thrown away. Where do I sign? Are you sure? This is a big commitment. You're her father. But this makes it official. Permanent. You can't change your mind when it gets hard. I've never been more sure of anything. Julian looked up at Naomi. I know I failed you as a husband. I know I threw away something precious. But I swear to you, I will never fail Kennedy. I will be the father she deserves. I will show up. I will do the work. I will be there. I know you will. That's why I'm offering this. They signed the papers that night, making it official. Julian had a daughter. Not just biologically, but legally, formally, completely. He was Kennedy's father, and nothing could change that now. When they told Kennedy the next day, she just shrugged. Cool. Does this mean I get 2 birthday parties now? Like one at each house? Naomi laughed. That's your main concern? Or, also, can I have a puppy? Because if you both have to agree now, maybe I can work you against each other. Nice try, Kennedy. Julian grinned. We actually agree on no puppies. Kennedy groaned dramatically. This partnership is already the worst. But then she hugged them both. Just kidding. I love you both, even without a puppy. I love you too, baby girl, Naomi whispered. More than all the stars in the sky, Julian added. Kennedy rolled her eyes. Okay, that's super cheesy, Dad. But I'll allow it. 3 years into their co-parenting arrangement, something shifted. Julian arrived to pick up Kennedy and found Naomi in tears. Kennedy had gone to her grandmother's for the night. What's wrong? Julian sat down. Is Kennedy okay? She's fine. It's the 5-year anniversary of the day you divorced me. I thought I was over it, but anniversaries have a way of bringing everything back. Julian felt stabbed. That day haunts me too. Because I hurt you so badly. I can't take it back, but I need you to know that I see it clearly now. What I did was unforgivable. Thank you. Want to do something crazy? She held up an old wedding photo. Help me burn this. I need to let it go. They went to her backyard and built a small fire. I loved you, you know. Back then I really did. I know, and I loved you too. I just loved myself more. She tossed the photo into the flames. How do you feel? Lighter. Like I'm finally closing that chapter. They watched the fire together. You know what's funny? If you hadn't divorced me, I never would have become who I am. Kennedy wouldn't exist without our marriage. And I wouldn't be me without our divorce. That's a generous interpretation. Julian reached over and squeezed her hand. Thank you for showing up. For changing. For being someone I can trust. As the fire died down, they sat together in comfortable silence. The past was ash. The present was peace. And the future belonged to a little girl who had both her parents, imperfect but trying, broken but healing, separate but together in the ways that mattered. Kennedy graduated elementary school at 11 years old, a year ahead because she was too smart for her grade level. Both her parents sat together in the audience, cheering louder than anyone when she walked across the stage. As they left the ceremony, Kennedy walked between them, holding both their hands. Best day ever, she announced. Both my parents together, and I'm officially going to middle school, where I'll probably take over the world. Probably? Naomi teased. Definitely, Kennedy corrected. I've already got a plan. Of course you do, Julian said. That night, they celebrated at Kennedy's favorite restaurant. Kennedy talked nonstop about her plans for middle school, for high school, for college, for NASA. "I'm going to Mars," she declared. "And you're both coming to watch the launch." "Wouldn't miss it," Naomi said. "Never," Julian agreed. Kennedy looked between them, suddenly serious. "You know what's cool?" "What, baby?" "Both of you asking at the same time. That you're friends. Like real friends. Not just people who have to be nice because of me. A lot of my friends' parents can't even be in the same room. That's cool. You're cool together." Naomi and Julian exchanged a look over Kennedy's head, a look that held years of pain, healing, forgiveness, and something else. Something new and fragile and possible. "Yeah," Naomi said softly. "We are pretty cool together." "The coolest," Julian agreed. He meant it. Somewhere between the anger and the forgiveness, between the hurt and the healing, they'd found something unexpected. Not romance, not yet, maybe never, but partnership, respect, friendship, and maybe, just maybe, the foundation for something more. Because 7 years after Julian had called Naomi worthless and thrown her away, she'd proven she was priceless. And 7 years after Naomi had sworn she'd never forgive him, she'd found that forgiveness didn't mean weakness. It meant strength. The strength to let go of pain. The strength to build something new from broken pieces. The strength to show their daughter that people can change, that mistakes don't define us, and that families come in all different shapes. As they walked Kennedy home under the stars she loved so much, Julian thought about the text message that had started it all. "We need to talk." 4 words that had seemed like an ending but turned out to be a beginning. The beginning of redemption. The beginning of growth. The beginning of a family that didn't look like anyone's plan but worked perfectly anyway. And as Kennedy chattered about constellations and Mars missions, Julian realized something profound. He'd spent his whole life chasing success, building empires, trying to prove his worth through money and power. But here, walking between the 2 people who mattered most, he finally understood what he'd been searching for all along. Not success, not wealth, but this simple, perfect moment. This family. This love. What did you think of Julian, Naomi, and Kennedy's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to follow all our stories. And check out more emotional stories right here on the final screen.